From the Amplified Growth Studios in Alexandria, Virginia, this is Association Chat with your host, KiKi L'Italien. There are many perspectives to a discussion about crisis communications, but today I wanted to focus on how the collaboration between CEO and communications director can encourage a stronger connection between association and its members during difficult times. So with that, I invited Peter O'Neill and Andy Cutler to be my guests today. Peter's the Chief Executive Officer of ASIS International, the largest global membership organization for security management professionals that crosses industry sectors from operational to cybersecurity. And Andy Cutler serves as the Director of Communications there for ASIS. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Things have been happening rapidly with the virus, how it's been progressing and how it's been impacting businesses, industries, countries all over the world. And it's definitely not business as usual. Can you talk to me a little bit, and I'll start with you, Peter, can you talk to me a little bit about when all of this really started taking place so that you knew you were going to have to start shifting your communications?
Sure. So I think in some ways, as a global organization, we were a little bit lucky because we have staff that sits in Brussels and covers that part of the world for us. We have very strong leaders in other regions of the world, not necessarily paid staff yet. And we very much saw what was happening, certainly not just from the news and the normal outlets that you would see, but certainly from our European-based staff. And so we probably had, I would say, probably maybe a 10-day head start to be able to look at our business continuity plan, sit down with our what we call first level team, take a look at it, evaluate it. What steps did we start taking? We began to evaluate what programs were coming through April. At that point, we later switched to May, switched through May. We started talking about what might we do at HQ. We're already set up to be virtual if we need to be, laptops, all the infrastructure. We did a little bit of testing on that, little load testing. We had a terrible flash flood here about 9 months ago in the summer. And about a year ago, in the summer. So we knew what it was like to have to suddenly virtually work with literally no notice. And so we had already sort of tested our systems a bit, but we did a little bit of load testing and so forth, and really geared ourselves up with messages. Having Andy Cutler in the room with us from the beginning, as we talked about the what, the why, the who, the when, and that shifted almost daily, day by day, sometimes half a days it would shift. But putting Andy in the room from the beginning really helped us, I think, ultimately craft messages more quickly and get them out more quickly. We were fortunate in that way.
So, Andy, when you're thinking about, there are all different types of situations where you have to be delicate. Internal politics, the external politics, this isn't either of those. This is something totally different, right?
I would agree with that. I would go one step further and even say that if most people were to look at their crisis management, most communications professionals were to look at their crisis communications plan, Peter, I'm going to use the operative term that Peter used earlier, which is business continuity. Is there business continuity sewn and woven into the fabric of that plan? And if there isn't, an organization really has to be asking itself not only why, but how do we fix that? How do we adjust for that? Our plan, we were fortunate in what Peter had said earlier. We had our own mini crisis in terms of a flood in the office, not anything nearly like what's going on right now globally, but it did activate certain things about what worked well, what we could improve upon. And so the point, I guess, with crafting messages and crisis communications in general, KiKi, I would say to you and your viewers would be, it can always evolve. It can always be better. If you have that perspective, then it won't be stagnant and you won't keep making the same mistakes over and over. So we're fortunate in our membership base in that we, as Peter can attest, we have an incredibly active group of individuals who do not see themselves as competitors, but rather as colleagues, and they collaborate on a daily basis. So our response in many ways was truly a reflection of the people that we represent, in that it was collaborative, it was inclusive. And I think when you make a process inclusive, and you and I had a chance to talk about this the other day, that the outcomes tend to be better than when people are just hunkered down in a war room trying to make decisions in a vacuum, and that's not what's happening at ASIS, fortunately.
This is the point in the interview where I really wanted to know how they were communicating with their members specifically based on what their members were going through.
Andy, build on this, if you will, but I think there's a couple of different answers here. It's not one answer, it's sort of a little bit layered, if you will, right? So first and foremost, many of our security management managers and directors and CISOs and CSOs, right? They are first responders in a situation like this, right? For the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Their day-to-day guard force all the way up through the chains of the C-suite. And so for members like ours, for the most part, when something like this occurs, or there's a natural disaster that occurs or something like this, they're first responders, right? So they're standing things up and they're putting their protocols in place, and they're implementing their business continuity plans, all those things you'd expect their companies to do. And then the scene unfolds, or the situation unfolds, and now they're playing different roles. Maybe they're no longer the first responder, they're now monitors. They move to a monitoring role. And it depends, of course, on the size of your organization and where you're located and what your responsibilities are. So for a lot of our members, we're actually, well, depends on what part of the world you're in right now, right? Pandemic. So in fact, in our senior leadership management team call that Andy and a bunch of us were on today, we're beginning to look at this more regionally. So first we set up global resources, and now we tend to look at this more regionally and say, look, Asia Pac largely looks like it's starting to come through what we're going to call COVID recovery. So the products and services, the learnings, the knowledge transfer they need from us right now is very different than Europe, who is very much in the throes of COVID, right? And so right now, what we see them as what we call COVID. What do I call it? COVID today, I think, Andy, is what I called it in our meeting. COVID today means what? It means asynchronous learning. It means giving them access to business continuity plans or resilience plans that they need right now. Giving them our ASIS Connects platform, which is similar to ASAE Collaborate, where they can share information real time. We're not going to put out a webinar on ethics today. We're not going to put out a webinar on how to study for our certification exams today, because that's tone deaf to North America, to Europe. In North America, we have a program taking place later this week that was being pre-promoted. It's not pandemic related, it's not response related, et cetera, et cetera. We have 482 people that have registered. Do we cancel that, or do we go on with it? We're going to go on with it because 482 people have registered. Now, if 25 people attend, it's recorded. So we'll meet the needs of the 25. It'll go asynchronous. It'll be in our learning management system, et cetera, et cetera. So I say this to say we're having to scale regionally now. We went to the globe. We got our resources stood up. We figured out the macro stuff, and now we're getting to look at it by regions because of the way this disease is progressing. And so we'll treat Europe right now differently than we'll treat North America, but we'll learn from Europe,
right,
as we learn from Asia Pac. So we'll be able to cascade the learning or have it have a domino effect for us. So by the time we're in the throes of, say, COVID here in the next 10 days, 14 days, and the Europeans are hopefully beginning to come out of it a little bit, we're going to be able to continue to learn from them and redeploy resources, asynchronous resources where we can. So we're very much a learning organization. This is all happening real time. We have a great plan, but that plan evolves and iterates every day, half a day, by an hour sometimes. I think last thing I'll say about this for this point is, here at ASIS, we are fortunate. We have a great team. We have been working together for 4 years to reset this organization in a way that's been, I would say, fairly intense. And all of a sudden, boom, this gets put on our lap at a time when we as an organization, we're starting to sort of hit a stride, if you will, and come out of some of our resetting. And we're faced with this. But where we're lucky and where we're fortunate and where we've planned for this is we're all working so well together across all these traditional and atraditional lines of our work. We got 90 staff, we're global, and that just means we got more ground to cover. People think, oh, you got so much money and so many resources and so many staff. You never have enough money, you never have enough staff, right? And so where I think we're very fortunate is we have a great team in a company called Exempla in Brussels. 5 of them that pivot literally at the spur of a moment. We've got 90 staff here who have demonstrated our ability to pivot and really work with each other. And that's maybe the last point to make on this. Really, the most important thing for our team right now is that they are well physically and they are well mentally. And what we're saying to folks as we go virtual today, we've been liberal telecommute for the last 10 days, and we go hard stop today at the office and hard close today. We're ready for this, but people need to take care of themselves. The work will be here. The work needs to get done, but people need to take care of themselves. And that right now, really to our staff team, is our primary message.
It is an interesting set of problems and challenges that we're facing because, even no matter what our organizations go through, it's not usually impacting all of our personal lives at the same time. And so at the same time,
or the globe.
Yeah. And so all of us are going through additional stress, additional adversity, while we're trying to solve the problems that we need to solve, and still show up for our members. And it's just an interesting time. Kate says, I feel like it's easier to communicate with members during this time because the message is more about offering them help and resources. Being in marketing right now is very awkward communicating to the public and non-members. How to promote value without seeming callous or tone deaf, especially since this is going on for most of spring.
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about in the call that Peter was just referencing was this. I think you hit the nail on the head, that we're living in this really unique period of time. And I don't think I'm the first person to say that. That's not really a profound statement. But I do think that what's interesting, one of the dimensions of this, which makes it a very complex situation, is we're living in this time when people's personal lives and their professional lives have now had a head-on collision, right? Unavoidable. And so what you do with that is really important. And I think, again, I never thought I'd be able to evoke the late, great Frank Zappa in an association chat, but he has this great quote, which is, without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. And I think that what I'm learning every day, what Peter's teaching me, and what I think we're learning at ASIS as a group, is that there is a silver lining here, which is becoming better, becoming stronger, becoming more resilient. It's not about perfection anymore. I think a lot of times there's this veil, this cloak that communications professionals have, and I say this as one, that never let them see you sweat, or about perfection in messaging and all that stuff. All those rules, right, are out the window. Mm-hmm. And the whiteboard is literally clean, and we can actually be the masters of our own destiny here. And I think that we're choosing as an organization very proactively to use this moment that matters as a way to adjust and become better on the other side of it.
Yeah, I agree. Kate, I almost want to add one thing to Kate. Kate, in our management, I think it was largely a management team meeting. There were a lot of people on the call today. Mm-hmm. Here's the language that I've tried to use, and I think we're now trying to use in our organization. We right now are taking a wholesale look at first of all, we have stopped all messaging for the most part for the next 48 to 72 hours out of ASIS. That doesn't specifically relate to resources that right now, and what I call COVID today, for our members in North America in particular, North America, Europe in particular, which is where the largest group of our members come from. We have another couple, 2,000-3,000 in Latin America, another couple of thousand in Asia Pac, but really 80% of our membership, if you will, sits in North America. That does not include Mexico, but in our definition, and of course Europe. So about 85% of our members sit largely in those two regions. So this helps frame it. But the conversation we've had here is this: we can't be seen as tone deaf. Mm-hmm. And what I call the difference between marketing and communications is exclamation point, period. We're going to be a lot more comms and a lot less marketing. Mm-hmm. By the way, we're launching our 20,000 person annual meeting reg launched Friday. We delayed it a full week to really tweak our messaging. So when we launched our annual meetings website, if you go look at gsx2020.org, you will see that we did not come out with register for our meeting because you should. No, We came out with, hey, we get it. A lot going on. By the way, reg is opening. You can register with confidence knowing that we have a satisfaction guaranteed program, or we'll make it right. And we have a bona fide program like that, which means in this case, you register with confidence knowing if you can't attend ASIS's annual meeting in Atlanta with your 20,000 global peers because of COVID, post our normal cancellation time, we will make it right. So I think I say this to you, Kate, to say you should probably take a wholesale look at all of your messaging right now from both marketing and comms relative to products and services, decide which ones you're going to put to the side. You know, my members right now, ethics is a very big thing for them. But if I tried to put out an ethics webinar right now, that would be tone deaf. On the other hand, we'll do resilience programs. We'll do programs around good mental and physical and, thus and so health. And how do you, get somebody from Edelman on to talk about, how do you manage to the C-suite if you're in that role, and how are you messaging to your day-to-day staff, so to speak, right? We'll look at COVID through the lens, in our case, of security management, and we will help our members in that way. And I think the last thing I'll say is the theme of this has been, don't be tone deaf. Mm-hmm. Don't be going out marketing, oh, come sit for my certification program. By the way, Prometric just shut down all of their testing sites. So they couldn't even do that right now. So I just would say, don't be tone deaf. Look back at your messaging. Look at what you've got coming out the next 10 days. Say yes to some people, no to others, and get them to come along with you to understand why this is about a period, not an exclamation point.
I saw something in the events community, of course, which has been hit terribly. Meetings in the association industry, it's just decimated. And for those associations who rely heavily on revenue that comes from annual meetings and just multiple meetings that they have throughout the year, it's devastating. And for those suppliers who support those meetings, equally as devastating, if not more so. And so people are wondering if they're even going to be able to continue to do what they're doing. In the meantime, I saw a calculator being promoted for figuring out your AV costs for your next event. And I thought, this is a terrible time.
Really? That's tone deaf, people.
Oh, promote that now. No one's trying to figure that out right now.
Look, let's talk about revenue for a second, right? Because I don't want to come across as being impervious to revenue challenges. We're a $30 million organization. We're 90 staff. This organization has been running a deficit budget. The 4 years before I got here, we closed that significant revenue gap, but we're still spending deficit right now. I've got about 20 million bucks in the bank. Sounds like a lot of money, except when you're deficit spending, when you're not going to hit revenue goals, and the market's continuing to tank. That puts a three-way pressure on resources. So to be clear, and Andy and I and the team talked about this today, right? I'm not tone deaf to our revenue issues. So as the CEO, I'm not saying to the staff team, oh, gosh, we don't need to make any money. We don't really need to worry about that. We do. But the thing is, we're not going to make the money anyway, and we're going to look tone deaf if we don't address the messaging. So I don't want to lose the money, and I'd like to actually be proven wrong that we won't, a la the webinar that we're having at the end of this week that people already signed up for. We'll see how many show up. Time will tell. But I guess my point is, none of us I don't know anybody that can afford to walk away from revenue. I don't care what's going on in the world. I'd love to meet that person on the one hand. On the other hand, you can't jeopardize the future by looking so, again, tone deaf by continuing to just put things out there. If you've never done free webinars before, now's the time to do them. If you've never set up an asynchronous learning via a podcast or something, relatively inexpensive, now is the time to do it. Because on the other side of this, your brand reputation is going to be what you're remembered for. Members are unencumbered by three things: facts, budgets, and organizational politics. Mm-hmm. So I'm going out and looking at all my current competitors and saying, what are we doing better together? Mm-hmm. Because I'm losing money, you're losing money. We're all after the same resources, the same speakers, the same experts. We're all doing asynchronous learning, webinars. We're all some of us have a great Andy. Well, nobody has the best Andy because we have Andy, but people have comms people, right? How do you marshal those efforts in a way that you get your brand out there, they get their brand out there? It's a win-win. So we lose less money together. But more importantly, the memberships that we serve, the industries that we serve, they see that we're working together because, again, they're unencumbered by facts, by budgets, and by organizational politics. And I think there's a real opportunity here for all of these associations that we all do business with to really think better, different, more, and really get out there and push the envelope of what they might ordinarily do. If you don't do that, if we don't do that, many of our organizations, they won't survive this. They don't have the resources. They don't have the reserves. They don't have the volunteer leadership. They maybe don't have the staff leadership. You're going to see a lot of associations on the other side of this be really hurt, and mostly by this resulting economic tsunami that is just practically over top of us right now, and it's still not done. And I think 18 months from now, we're going to see a different association landscape, sadly.
We talked a little more about what was happening in the association industry, and then took a question from Emily, who was watching the discussion live.
Yeah. Hi, Peter and KiKi. Hi, Emily. Would love to hear.
Emily.
Yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on a board member who is well-intentioned about offering service. Oh, I think I know where this is going. Offering services to all members, but the services are really quite outside of the association purview. I gently told him this, and the response was, we should make everything available to all people.
Emily, my friend, I feel for you, and you're not the only person going through this. Here's what I would say. Member to member, staff to staff, right? CAE studying 101. Your board chair must have this person stand down. I would imagine, I know Emily, I believe you all have a conflict of interest statement that your boards sign every year. If you don't, everyone should have that, right? If you don't have that to fall back on, you've got to get your board chair to stop this person. It's going to tarnish the entire brand of the organization. This guy isn't just a member, he's a board leader, and he's going to be viewed as whatever he's doing. It is, to me, a part of risk management. I love to use the word, this is a whole nother KiKi program we could do. I manage from a point of risk. What risk and X am I willing to accept? HR, business management, revenue yield, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, this is about risk related to brand, related to what your board member is doing. And I appreciate that you tried to do take it for the team and get him or her, I think it's him, to stop. And that's great. I probably would have had my board chair do it first, but now I would definitely have my board chair. Now, if it is my board chair, then I'd get the president-elect or somebody. I don't know. You go to somebody else. And Emily, you and I can chat offline about this too. But I think there is no gently. His peers going to tell him he is going to harm the reputation of the brand that you all share if he continues to do this, and he must stand down, especially if the product is outside of the association's purview. Andy Cutler will attest to the fact that one of our guiding North Stars this morning in our staff meeting, or yes, this afternoon, in our management team meeting, was what we do must be put through the lens of the security management practitioner. What we produce can't, largely be what you can get from the AMA or SHRM. We might reference SHRM resources. We might reference epidemiology resources. We might reference, business continuity resources. But what we do, what we sell, what we communicate must be from the lens, or put through the lens of the security management practitioner. So I don't know if that helps you, Em, but we can chat offline too if you want.
I was going to add one more thing to Peter, what Peter just was talking about. Some people might say that's a bit restrictive or constrictive in some ways. It adds a sense of clarity, but two, it doesn't mean that there's no interpretation on that. That's a contextual place to start. So for us, it's through the lens of the security professional, but the security professional is interested in risk management, right?
And communications and leadership.
Right.
And
so the mental health of employees is risk management. The actual facilities is risk management. The cyber health of an organization is risk management. And so we're able to have a fairly expansive perspective on that through that seemingly narrow lens.
I wanted to ask Andy, what was the toughest thing about communicating during the pandemic?
Well, I think one other dimension to it is the element of social, right? So
Yes.
that's a whole nother animal and beast that's interconnected to this play. But listen, again, I'm not saying that we're perfect and our approach is perfect, but what I am saying is I think we're going about it the right way, in that we've created teams internally regarding content that exist, that have members from our magazine on there, that have members, our editorial team, have members of the communications team on there, and others, so that we're acting as each other's safety net. So again, a lot of times the reaction to these kinds of situations in the past where I've been a part of them, whether it be in government or in healthcare industry, has been to kind of hunker down in a bunker and just push out stuff. And that may have worked before, but that certainly is not going to work now. And so the importance of having cross-functional teams, I mean, Peter mentioned that we're about a 90, 100-person organization, which to some that may sound like a lot, to others that may not sound like that much. But I can tell you with 100 people roughly, things can slip through the cracks. The left hand might not know what the right hand's doing, that there aren't systems in place to prevent that. And so as we move forward every step of the way, one consistent question we keep asking ourselves is, who else needs to be in the room? It's not restricted in nature. It's more inclusive in nature. And it, again, doesn't mean perfection is the ultimate outcome, but we're more likely to be in a positive situation having that perspective.
You've just listened to the first half of my interview with Andy Cutler and Peter O'Neill of ASIS International. Be sure to watch for the second half of that interview. Thanks for listening to this episode of Association Chat. If you like this episode or even just the concept of the show, please subscribe and share it with your friends. We'd love to have them here.